Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hello and welcome to How Do Artists, a show that focuses on a single topic of conversation and asks the question, how do artists live, work, play, run their business, stay inspired, or handle challenges and adversity from an artist's perspective? Our show will speak with a diverse group of artists and creatives, and you, as our listeners, will have a chance to ask your questions during our Q&A segment towards the end of our show. I am your co-host, Karlana Pedersen, artist and illustrator, and I am joined by co-host Ryan Caldwell, musician and producer.
Thank you, Karlana. We are excited to say that tonight we have a conversation with New York performer and holistic vocal coach, Chelsea Camin. Trained both in classical and musical theater techniques, Chelsea has began to study and perfect the art of cross-training singers' voices. By doing this, she has given each of her vocal students a sustainable and healthy technique to utilize in their performances. Not only is she a musical theater coach, but Chelsea is developing a course called The Awakened Artist, where she walks you through your performance of singing in a more holistic and centered manner. Welcome to our podcast, Chelsea.
Welcome.
How are you doing tonight?
I am so great. So excited to be here.
Well, thank you for being here.
Well, it's nice to have you.
Wonderful.
Okay, so why don't you provide our listeners with a brief background of what you do and how you got started as a holistic vocal coach?
Okay, so I am a private voice teacher, and since the quarantine started, pandemic began, I have been teaching online completely. And this actually has offered me a chance to teach all around the globe. So it's been a very exciting time for me. And I've been able to kind of branch out and meet more of my community. It's been very exciting. And I got into everything by means of studying music education. And I received a couple of degrees in that. And I was going to be a school teacher. And I was working towards that. I got my New York State certifications. And the year that I was offered a substitute teaching gig, I was also offered this gig to teach privately in a studio in Huntington, New York, and actually get to know all of my students. So I thought I should take this opportunity, and I started teaching privately on Long Island. And that's been a wild ride because I definitely didn't know that I was going to be doing this.
Wow.
Well, and what did you study? Did you study for music education or for performance?
So I actually received 2 degrees in music education. I studied my undergraduate. I know. I really love music education. I really am. I really do. I'm an advocate for the arts. I'm an advocate for music education.
Fantastic.
So I received my undergraduate. I did my teaching there. I got my degree through that, my New York State teaching through that. And then I went to Columbia University Teachers College, got my master's there, and studied for a year and a half under some of the greatest teachers I've ever known.
Nice.
Wow.
And so that's been a wild ride, and that's been several years ago already. So I'm constantly studying, constantly developing my own techniques. So it didn't just end there. I still study vocal pedagogy and all that good stuff to be a great teacher.
Wow.
Oh, I love the term pedagogy. It's one of my, it's a fun, like, cause until you're in like those spheres, you never hear that.
You never say
No,
that.
you never hear that. That's not something that you hear in conversation.
Right. The word is very elite sounding.
Well, and
but
for anyone who is as ignorant as I was listening right now, the pedagogy is the study of teaching.
Yes,
which is really it's a real meta concept.
Right, the study of teaching, but in voice pedagogy, that is the study of teaching voice.
Yeah.
So there
which
you
is
are.
super important, and no one can really agree on it, and it's
no,
but it's much needed if you think about it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there have been so many situations where even I knew people who did not have vocal training, who were straining their vocal cords, not warming up properly. I used to be in music myself, and so I think we were having this conversation, and I was an engineer, and I used to have to try to help singers, and sometimes it was really hard because they didn't have anything to call upon in terms of their training to do it.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
So it's difficult sometimes. So it's much needed.
Well,
yeah.
and
Oh
no, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was going to say as the technique is needed. That was all.
Well, right, and that's actually the interesting thing is that singing is one of those weird things because everyone starts out with this instrument, and some people do fantastic without any vocal coaching or training. However, I mean, even though there's a real heavy intuitive aspect to it, it's also, I mean, what you find with those people is you basically get into situation if they're not diverse in their skill set. They don't have a diverse foundation, and they also have no communication skills. That's where like that. I mean, but think about it. Unless you've had a teacher that teaches you like the language of that technique and music and what you're doing, you have no way to go and communicate your ideas. You're basically a feral human at that point.
Wait, are we talking about
the stereotype of
singing,
the dumb,
or are you talking about the process of communicating in a producer engineer manner? Because those two are a little different sometimes.
Well, both things kind of, but basically like there is a language to singing and like the terms you can use, and so a producer could say I need a little more forward resonance, or show me a little more teeth in this take, and you might just be like,
you don't know what that means. I totally get that, but I think that where holistic value comes into play that's important is not just the technique that Ryan is discussing, which is important, but how you take care of your vocal cords. I've heard, I've known singers who have been professional singers doing it for a long time who didn't have really that foundation of knowing how to take care of their vocal cords, because it's a muscle. And over time is when the damage happened, not
absolutely
in these, moments
stress.
of recording. Woo! Yeah. Over time is when the real stress and the damage sort of occurred, the polyps and the nodes and all these things that sometimes happen when you're overstraining. So talk to us about that process with your students and helping them with their technique, and how does that relate to what we're really going to talk about, which is the stage fright part of it, because I feel that they're connected.
They are so connected.
That's true,
it's funny. I never called myself a holistic voice coach before until I realized I was doing a holistic approach. I've always cared about the whole student. And it's not just, how's your week going? Mental check-in. But I'm really asking, are you hydrating? How's your whole body feeling? Did you sleep? So by holistic, people people think that I'm just teaching in an ashram. Like it's not about that. That's not what holistic.
They think you're going and then that's it, right? Like
I'm just
Or the other definition of holistic being just ineffective.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I totally get what you mean, because it's like one of the hardest things with voice is just that your instrument is literally a part of you. And so if you're not taking care of the rest of you, brain included, then you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yes. Singing is body,
no pun
mind,
intended.
Spirit. Holistic. But singing is body, mind, spirit. We need all the connection to happen so that the instrument can be free and release the sound properly. If we just focus on certain exercises that are just vocal, we only meet like 20% of the instrument's ability. We need to have this kind of balance of the really mindset, which is so important to singing. That's, I dare say, pretty much on the 70-80% side of how important it is to your singing. If you think you can't hit a note, you won't hit that note.
Oh, yeah.
If you think your voice is getting tight, your voice is going to get tight. Like you create your reality vocally.
It's awful. It's so bad.
Yeah. It's almost like
that's a lot. That's with a lot of things. I
Oh
believe.
yeah.
Yes.
And it's just, I think
Totally.
one of the things with voice in particular is that it's like, cause yeah, like you just said, there's so many ways that manifests itself in our lives, like, especially with any sort of confidence, right? But especially with voice, it's night and day difference, whether you think you can or think you can't. Like,
Either
I
way,
remember,
you're right.
yeah, when I was taking voice lessons, there was one of those things where basically she said, no, the only way for you to hit that note is just actually thinking that you can hit it. Also, that note is clearly inside your range and you just think you can't hit it because it's the highest note in the song, but you still have you have a third above that. That's easy. Yeah.
Do you have to hear it in your head before you can hit it? Because I used to be able to have to hear it in my head and then I could hit it. But if I couldn't hear it,
that is a really interesting question. I don't think I personally do that, but I think that's a really helpful thing that I'm going to steal from you right now, because some of my students might really resonate with that. I think especially your visual auditory, I think you might have a special connection that maybe I don't, because I'm not a painter.
But if I could hear it, I could, if it was if it was in my range, but if I could even go beyond my range a little, if someone played it on the piano, hit the note, then I could hear it back in my head, then I didn't have a problem singing it.
I think for me personally, it is totally almost like a visual thing that happens in my mind that I don't think of the piano. The piano actually restricts me.
Really?
It restricts a lot of my students because you see it and you kind of know like the vocal athletic you need. Because you go, oh, that's a high C. Oh, that's a G.
You never let the student look at the keyboard while you're warming them up.
Yes, precisely.
Is that your trick, Ryan?
Because basically because they'll go and they'll be like, oh, here I'm coming to the note that I can't hit.
It's so true. That is true. For me, it's a very visual thing. I have to think about it very free in my body. That's how I got to holistic. Because I'm not your average.
See it? How do you see?
I kind of see in my mind's eye. I don't see what I hear, but I imagine more of like a visual release, like maybe even just like something that you might see like a swirl or something that I would. Okay. That's how I see things, but I don't think about it from an auditory point of view.
That's interesting.
But everybody's different. That's the coolest thing.
Yeah, because like audiating, like hearing sounds in your head. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, I definitely that's 100% what I would do. And I don't even have a visual component to that. At all. But I mean, that's also one of those interesting things. I mean, I like you just being like grabbing that, need that now, because I mean, anything that came easily is the hardest thing to teach. Like if you came easily or you only have one route with that, then that's that. Yeah, that was one of the things I found out. I got conned into teaching guitar at one point, and I'm self-taught on guitar, and I had no idea how much of it just kind of came like that because I was already a pianist and a percussionist. And so it's like, oh, I already I have nothing for, I don't have any exercises. I have nothing. No one had to help me through that. Well,
that's so true.
Well, and the other thing is that's also a lot of how stage fright worked for me. I basically was a victim to the brute force method, where they just kept getting me on stage and doing recitals and concerts and shows. And then of my own volition, I did a lot of open mic nights and things like that. And eventually I just became completely numb to it. Right. However, that is not most people's experience, and honestly, probably not the best way to do it. But let's go and dig into that. So do you have a lot of diverse approaches to how to handle stage fright, or is it just the one track?
No, there are, because as you've learned just from here, we all see notes differently. So imagine, I took this course in my undergrad, and it actually proves to us we are all special learners. We all learn in a special or extraordinary way. So in that, you have to create tools around each learner. So let's say I have one student who might need to hear the note before they sing it. But there are all different types of learners. So there are so many different tools for this. I can go on. So
okay, well,
do you want me to just start at the top?
Well, so with stage fright, I don't know. Well, let's see here. What are some good preventative measures for it?
So this is, yeah, sure.
Well, no, so
Karlana,
before we get to that, maybe we can explain to our listeners what's the difference between
You're right.
stage
You're
fright
right.
and performance anxiety. Is there a difference between those two? And if so, how do you tell the difference? And then we can kind of
Ooh.
work from there,
Oh,
I think,
yeah.
as to
Let's dish out those
So I think-
connotations.
I think everyone has I think everyone has their level of fright or anxiety. I think a simple case of stage fright, and we'll call it stage fright for more of a moderate to not as severe, really a lesser form. I would say, ooh, my heart's racing a little bit. I'm scared, but I'm a little excited. That's what I would call stage fright. I would say more like that. Like you get on stage and it's almost like, and in that moment, you don't know whether you're going to croak or be fabulous. So
okay.
it's that, not completely
tank or
croak,
be
but
good. You don't know if the audience is going to throw stuff at you or cheer with you.
right. So there's like that level of fright, like, oh, I'm a little scared. Then we get into performance anxiety, and it can all be under that umbrella, but performance anxiety, I would say, is a little bit more severe. I would say that this is possibly even a diagnosable type of anxiety, and that it does go hand in hand if you have anxiety. I actually do have anxiety. So hello, hence why we're talking about this. I had to overcome it. So how do I overcome it? I know how to teach it now. I know how to teach how to overcome it because I've had it.
Right.
So I would say performance anxiety is definitely more diagnosable. I don't know many therapists, but I'm sure it probably is. It is more on the severe side, I would say. And performance anxiety is, I'm going to faint. I really am going, I'm physically feeling it. I'm getting lightheaded. My mouth is dry.
Okay.
My heart is pounding, and
Actual panic attack territory.
This is an actual almost panic attack territory. So that's kind of more where I was headed towards. Not when I was very young. Like very young, I can do this, no big deal. What happened? Yeah. 12 years old, like I spoke to you guys about this. But I said that I could imagine several months ahead, that variety show. My heart was pounding at like midnight. Oh my God. And several months away. So that was the inkling of, I'm not like other girls. I'm nervous for something months ahead of time. And I just thought I would just get nervous for something. That was just totally a part of my life.
Yeah.
And I just accepted it, but still loved it so much. I was just like, whatever, I'll just deal with it. Always very scared, but always kept doing it. Then I got into college, and once you start studying something, it loses its fun.
Oh yeah.
And I started getting pitted against other people and having juries and judgings and this and that. And I started to kind of lose that outer glow and started feeling, ooh, I might actually not even be any good. And the ego starts telling us lies and says, the ego lies and says, you're not good. You shouldn't audition.
I love your scary voice. That's amazing.
Your fear is valid. Protect yourself. So
don't suffer the embarrassment.
Right. So performance anxiety got to an all-time high when I was around 20.
Oh, wow.
So I did my junior recital, nearly passed out doing it, but I did it and it went great. And then you're on this high.
Right.
And you're like, why did I ever think I couldn't do this? So your mind just constantly plays tricks on you. And college was my worst moment in my performance anxiety. And after that, when I started teaching and almost retreating from performing myself, like I would hide in choruses. I would not audition for solos. I did all of the things that said, I'm a New York performer without being known. So, here I am.
Sabotaging a little bit.
So you're self-sabotaging, and no matter what, the ego is getting its boost, whether it's for a bad thing or a good thing. So in an effort to not be an egomaniac, you're still kind of stroking the ego and saying, yes, the fear is real. So yeah, you want to not do that. And I have tools for you.
You have tools?
I have a
Oh,
whole
boy.
toolkit. There are, so, before each performance, I have like a different kind of gauge that I might need. So my tools differ before every performance or before any time that I have to like do something like this or, talk to someone. So it always kind of differs and has a range. And I'm going to start from the top, which is being present, staying in the present moment without overthinking, just staying very lightly, like word by word, note by note, whatever you're doing. Like right now, I'm thinking about just displaying my knowledge and talking to you guys. I'm not panicking about, okay, being present. I have to say this, right? I'm just staying in the moment. I'm sharing what I have to share with you, despite word fumbles or anything like that. So you want to stay present and be in the flow. I'm going to get to that a little bit more later.
Ooh.
But so being present is very, very important. And you're going to want to do that almost hand in hand with meditation as a behind the scenes thing. So I'm going to talk about that tool.
Okay.
So another tool that's incredibly helpful is in my studio, I actually have my students build their avatar. Now, this is what I like to call the Lady Gaga factor or the Beyonce Sasha Fierce factor. Beyonce creates Sasha Fierce to get on stage. Lady Gaga, Stephanie Germanotta created Lady Gaga to get on stage. So you almost create this persona with a whole system of values and things they hold near and dear to their heart and their mind. And you create this character. You can draw it out. You can draw out the person. You can draw out their wigs, whatever you need. And you create this person because it's very easy when you're in musical theater, I feel, because you can go on stage and say, my character wouldn't be scared. So essentially, I'm not going to be scared right now. Yeah, I'm going to be scared right up until I put on the shoes and get out there with this blonde wig. But you can also stay in that sort of avatar character mode when you're still yourself. So ways we can do this is really just by creating somebody that you want to most be. So that can still actually be, this is the funny part. While creating your avatar, you'd be so surprised to see that there's no cognitive dissonance. Like the things that you value are the things that your avatar values. So it might be confidence. Well, yeah, you're wanting that. So that's a value. That's a value that you hold and that your avatar holds. You might value honesty. Your avatar can hold that and you can hold that. And by the time you're done building your avatar, you actually realize, I think I just created my authentic self.
Wow.
Plot
That's
twist.
fantastic.
Yeah. So creating the avatar, this is my spiritual mentorship. This kind of goes hand in hand with everything that handles. But building that avatar is so important because we're so powerful. The mindset is so powerful, and we don't realize it until we build this avatar and we see, wow, these are some of the same values I hold. And
so
this is
Oh, sorry, not to interrupt, but I immediately had a flashback to Fight Club when you were talking about that. Being like, yeah, well, I technically Tyler Durden was also an avatar. Anyhow, as you were saying.
No, and if you find it hard to build the avatar, sometimes younger singers are like, this is not for me.
Yeah,
The thing you can do is just pretend to be someone else. You can pretend to, because I got to tell you, Adele pretends to be someone else too. So even if you had this mindset of, okay, I want to pretend to be Adele, you're pretending to be whoever Adele's pretending to be on stage.
Although
Who's
now
she pretending to be?
Well, now Adele's pretending to be someone with better vocal technique.
She's doing great. She's doing great.
Wow, you don't like Adele's voice?
No, her voice was great, but she had to get surgery.
Oh, that's
right. She did have notes.
Yeah, remember she did like Rolling in the Deep and then disappeared for a few years.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal when you're a singer and you've got to have palps or notes taken off.
Yeah. I mean, and
scary.
it's so rigorous, the touring schedule. Like that's something I know myself am not cut out for. It's crazy. That can be really, really insane. But yeah, so that's her ego or id that she probably pops on before stage, because really at the end of the day, we're all a bunch of scared children inside. It can be scary, you know, like if we're really being vulnerable, we are all that 5-year-old that's like, why am I doing this? So it's so important to build the thing you want to be. I think that's such an important thing in life and in performing. So that's a big tenet for me. The next thing is the behind the scenes work. That's your meditation. That's actually going on YouTube and going confidence meditations or self-esteem meditations, or honestly, I still do it. Like, how can I feel good today? How can I feel ready for this? There's even, if you have the Calm app, there's a confidence series. Love it. There's actually something before your big meeting, or and it just kind of talks you through being still present in the flow, and that kind of really gets me into a Zen state and can help logically get me out of fear, because logically I've already built up this muscle. It's about pushing yourself to that edge. Just like exercise, you're building that muscle. So the muscle starts to remember, oh, I've done this before. I can do it again. No big deal. No sweat. I'm capable. And every time that fear comes up, you just keep reminding yourself logically, nope, I can do this. I can do this. I've done it before. But the thing is, you got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it over and over again. So your subconscious goes, she has been doing this a lot. Or they haven't.
So speaking of exercising, do you have specific exercises that you give to your students for preventative measures, so things that they can do in addition to meditation, or maybe it's just meditation that you do? Walk us through a little bit of that.
So breath work is so important in getting our heart rate back down. So there's not necessarily, there are vocal things that you can do, like a whale, or that, a well-supported, just getting it out, getting that energy out. But really, there's nothing that you can do vocally that can take away the fear. The fear is in the body. The fear is in the mind and the body, not always just lying in the vocal folds. You know what I mean?
Right.
So breath work and releasing that nervous energy from the body is paramount. The vocal part, though, that's all learned through the voice technique. So there's the voice coach, which is the vocal folds and the exercises and all that. And the holistic is the body, the breath, the spirit. So that's that size. So there actually isn't like one exercise that I do necessarily that can stop the shakiness, because the shakiness might still be there regardless. Right.
Yeah.
So breath work is so important. So that is an inhale 1, 2, 3, and a hold of 4, and then out for 8. You have to build up to 8. It's very difficult to breathe in, hold, and then do for 8. You really have to work on your breath support and releasing very, very slowly. So that actually helps scientifically lower the heart rate. I've done my research.
And these are probably techniques that help anyone who has anxiety to a large degree.
Yes.
Performance anxiety is in corporate too, when people have to do presentations. I mean, some people like fall apart and they're like, oh my gosh,
absolutely,
I don't want to speak in front of these 20, executives.
So I was gonna say they could rewind, but one more time. What were those numbers for breath holding? Because I feel like I've heard this number before.
So you can go. So this I do a lot. I actually do this for my students who also start having some meltdowns in their lessons. I have, listen, we as artists are notoriously hard on ourselves. So there are tears. That's okay. So it's in 2, 3. So you'll just breathe in, hold 2, 3, 4, and then release 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then just completely, whatever you have left, let out. Hiss,
and for anyone listening, feel free to breathe along with us at home.
Yes, we're doing it.
This is actually a meditation.
I'm doing it right now. I'm
that's
quite relaxed.
Huge, though.
Thank you.
Big, deep breaths. Oh yeah.
Seriously, I mean, it's so important.
The hold gives us that. That hold gives us that kind of shelf, and then we then can deeply feel that release. And the release really is the mental and the physical that we're allowing to kind of sew into the body. So now when we have that release, we're mentally going, I'm releasing. Your subconscious goes, oh, she's letting go of something. They're letting go of something. So it is important. And the breath work like that is so important to your singing. So that's not something wasted. So calming a student down is never wasted breath work. You're not wasting my time. We're actually building your stamina.
Right.
Well, and especially you can make that a good, nice, deep, low breath too.
Oh, yes. Remember, the ribs have to expand. The chest has to stay still.
I was just going to say that. And I came from the generation where the vocal teachers would turn you around and say, feel that right there underneath your rib cage?
Yes.
That's your diaphragm. Now, of course, the teachers cannot touch you, can't do any of that. But my daughter, I would do that to her all the time because she sings. And so I'm like, Kaylin, you're not using your diaphragm. And she's like, I don't know where it is. And I'm like, turn around, you know?
And diaphragm is such a strange terminology for this generation. And there are actually so many voice teachers that are like refraining from using that terminology.
Because they can't show you where it is. There's no way they can show you where your diaphragm is unless they take your finger and show you where it is. And that's where I learned how to expand and contract my diaphragm to get more air into your lungs.
I used to draw pictures. I'd be like, here's your lungs and here's the rib cage and there's the diaphragm and there's your guts. And if when the diaphragm pushes out, all your guts go out. So if your guts aren't going out, you're not getting any real air.
So listen, kids, do it like me.
Ryan.
So squeeze your guts; they don't mind. It doesn't, unless they're digesting food, in which case they mind a little bit. But who cares what they have to say anyhow?
Truly, yeah. I mean, and sometimes it's for the younger students, you might want to say like it's your laugh muscle or your cough muscle or something that they can relate it to. But yeah, it's ask 10 voice teachers how they feel about using the terminology diaphragm these days, and you're probably going to get some varied answers.
Yeah,
and for me, I'm like, let them know.
I was gonna say, and one of those voice teachers doesn't even know what the diaphragm is.
Probably.
That's also the worst. When you see like professional vocalists, just big chest breaths. It's like, oh, I wasn't aware. I thought that was illegal.
It's the lungs.
Yeah. And even the way of engaging the breath has changed since I started singing. It used to be low belly breath. Then recently my voice teacher was like, nah, your ribs got to expand.
No, I was the rib generation. My mom was the low belly because she used to talk about breathe from your belly. I'm like, Mom, they're telling me to breathe from my chest.
The ribs.
So it's generational.
The ribs, it seems cyclical. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's the worst part. No, but that's a huge. Well, I mean, because when you think about it, it's like, your whole chest cavity has to expand. All of it does expand, but as long as you're not doing like that solid clavicular breathing with your clavicles.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean, but
as long as like your shoulders still don't move your shoulders, that's never changed.
Right? Exactly. But you can tell those who are using it properly from those who can't.
Unless we're going way back to like some solid 1800s like operatic corset singing.
True.
They would pass out because they're not getting enough air. So
they're not.
They weren't. They passed out because they weren't getting enough air.
I was gonna say nothing makes diaphragmatic breathing harder. Like going and squeezing your diaphragm as hard as you can.
Yeah, those were terrible.
In come the guts, but yeah. So there are more tools if you want to hear more tools.
Oh, okay. Well, one thing I was gonna say is I want to hear. So, what's the worst stage fright experience you've seen? Basically, someone who didn't come out the other side well.
Okay.
Like, have you got any walk-offs or anything like that, or
no walk-offs? But things we've worked on. I've heard complete key changes.
Oh no!
And this poor girl, and I'm in the front row, like kind of going, like trying to get her back on track. And she's a phenomenal singer. She's a phenomenal singer.
If you can't hear yourself, you're doomed.
That's it. That's it. And I've just heard, honestly, I think the most, and this actually goes hand in hand with the breath support. The most common thing I hear is like the pitchiness and the wavering.
Yeah.
And that goes back to breath work. It's
Because they
really,
just can't get that. They can't connect with their support if they're nervous.
they get too much in the head, not enough into a calm body, and it's over before it started.
Hard. It's so hard.
It is so hard. And you know, it's funny, as much as I've had performance anxiety, I've never had it physically erupt with a vocal instability. I've never had.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I've never that. So it's funny because I sound like a basket case, but I've actually never personally had.
Well,
I've never personally had that shake or quiver.
You've never passed out on stage?
I haven't, but I always have that feeling like I'm about to, or my heart is racing so heavily. Or maybe it's so way worse in my mind than anybody else could even say in my eyes. You know, I think so much of how we build it up to ourselves. So I would tell you, like, yes, I should be diagnosed tomorrow, but you know, who knows? I do. You can also put on a good show, and I think that goes to being a performer and the training that you have in that, and that goes with my next tool, which is be so prepared. You're in the flow. Yeah. So make sure you're not. You know, what was that note? What are those words? You know it so well. It's ingrained in your DNA.
Yes.
I start all. I love that. I was like, oh, yes.
Karlana with the affirmative.
My motto, I don't know, you know, in New York, we have something called NYSSMA, New York State School Music Association. And and when you're doing higher level NYSSMA, which is just more complicated arias or musical theater songs, those level, it goes to a level 6. And I start my students way in advance. I start them. Most teachers might say, like, okay, it's January and we have to prepare for a March thing or April thing. No, September, you're coming in and we're learning this. We're learning it now. We're starting with diction. We're starting with the notes next week. I teach it to them the way I studied in college. I studied it. This is your translation week. This is your line week. This is your text communication week. This is so you really have to break it down. So it's on a cellular level. You cannot just kind of splotch it together. I have so many students that are like, I want to do this thing next week. And it freaks me out.
Well, so there's something I learned a while ago that kind of tees into that. Because, you know, you think about practicing, right? And, you know, practicing and rehearsing this stuff and going over it and knowing it like the back of your hand. But it's not just doing it, because amateurs practice until they get something right, but professionals practice until they can't get it wrong.
Ooh,
right.
You gotta write this down.
Well, and then the other one is like what I mentioned earlier, which is if you're on stage and you still have to think about what you're doing, if you're thinking, you're stinking. You're not in the moment, you're not in the flow, and you're not doing it. You're worrying.
That's right.
Yeah.
That I could not agree with that more, because there is such a difference in terms of preparation when you know the material, the song or the music, especially singers. If you know that song back and forth and upside down and inside out, and then you start to articulate what the meaning and the emotion of that song is, because you're past the words, you're now conveying meaning and emotion.
Yeah.
And that's a level that you have to get to in music. Definitely. So when singers are at that level, that's what every like opera singer, they are singing at that level. They are conveying 100%. The emotion of that aria. That's where they are. So when I hear just, pop singers singing, I mean, it's great. But like when you really get one singer or a singer that just takes it to that next level, it's amazing.
Right.
So you can't get there unless you go beyond preparing.
Yeah.
Right. I totally.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, to that, like I automatically thought of just you know your run of the mill auto-tuned pop song.
Right.
Do they sound mentally in it? Are they engaged? Are they? I feel like it's a lot of da 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 da. It's like,
Yes.
okay, well, thank you for that catchy tune.
Yeah.
Well,
That
I mean,
was fun.
and I think one of the other hard things with pop songs is frequently they're a little one note. I mean, it's like
Oh, absolutely.
they are designed, basically
They're-
they're manufactured to be two-dimensional.
Right.
Right.
To pander to the general public.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
And the vocalists in there are doing a fantastic job of also being cartoon characters.
There's nothing
So
wrong
true.
with there's absolutely nothing wrong with that market, because obviously there's a market for it because
There's a
people
market,
want
yeah.
it and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you need it. But if you're talking about like performing and
Oh, yeah.
performance work and crafting your music, that's that's a different subject. So I don't even like to compare the two, because they're both doing two completely separate things,
So,
right?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Two completely separate tracks.
They are doing, and you're also pandering to different people. You're pandering to general
Right.
public on the radio. You're pandering to an opera house with a subscription level of $1,000 per seat, and
Right.
it's a different kind of audience.
Expect a lot more than
So
I
I just wanted to quick circle back because I remembered a time when I was in choir, because you were talking about changing keys, doing like a impromptu sporadic key change on stage. However, I was in choir and we were doing this big Vespers concert, which happens every year. And I went to a huge choral school. Like
Vespers ordinary.
Oh yeah, but this is but basically the whole school is participating in this. It's like it's a massive event because vocal students I think just outnumber instrumental students.
What did you do, Ryan?
Department. What? Oh, I did stuff. But basically they had the top choir. No, yeah, they had all the men across all the choirs. So there's like a big old men's choir, and then there's also the two top choirs, or like the top choir and then the penultimate choir. And so they were performing. All the best vocalists were performing out in the very back of this giant auditorium. They were in the back behind the audience on top of the loge.
Oh,
or no, not on the loge, the balcony. And then the low level, like everyone gets in, men's choir is on stage, right? And they were thinking, it's like, yeah, that'll be a great setup. So, the more advanced people can go and perform in the harder acoustic.
And they can project more, is what they're thinking,
and it'll
right?
work. And so and the conductor was basically conducting both at the same time, one hand over here, one hand over here. But the acoustic, it's such a massive room, and with the place filled up, it's dead as heck. You get nothing back from it. Nothing. It's the opposite of an opera house. So basically they were actually, I think I was on stage for this. We were going through it and we were singing, and it was a little bit of a tricky piece, but then the men's choir on stage started falling flat.
Ooh.
And basically fell flat about a whole step. And the choir and the composite choir in the back of the house stayed straight as an arrow. And basically the second half of this piece ended up being aggressively bitonal.
Oh no.
And the conductor in the center was just like, this is my life. I did this. Oh no. It's like, we should have prepared better. Anyhow, someone went up to him after the show and said, that was actually really brave of you to go and do something so avant-garde for Vespers. That was like, I've never heard of bitonal sacred piece in this context before. This is amazing.
Oh, jeez.
Did you guys pull it off?
No.
I get it.
Well, no one screamed, no one stormed off stage, and no one left the audience. So I guess we pulled it off.
He's getting compliments.
Oh God. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was avant-garde. Okay, I got it.
Oh yeah, avant. It's very out. It's progressive. It's forward thinking. It's sounding bad on purpose. But yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
so
well, I was going to say
Ryan.
we're reaching the end of our time slot rapidly, but I want to make sure that anyone who's listening to this gets the full allotted amount of wisdom that you had prepared for them.
Oh.
So So what else you got? What haven't you touched yet?
Okay, so there's.
I'm assuming
tool.
you're prepared.
You have no idea.
She's got more material than we know what to do with.
Nice.
And that's honestly, that's one of my problems, I think.
Overpreparedness?
I give too well, because I'm trying to write something right now and I have like 24 pages and it's like too much. So I have to take away my coach was like, okay. I'm like, is it a lot? It's overwhelming. It's too much. He's like, you want to simplify it. You want to just make it easy for like an average person. I'm like, okay. Like, and I'm like a crazy person with like a chalkboard. Like, I'm like, yeah.
with strings and photographs.
Strings and photographs. Okay. Well, what I'm thinking is, I'm that person.
I feel like I've seen you like on stage somewhere in New York. I've spent time in New York for a little bit.
I was in this choir in New York City. It was called Cantori New York. And we performed in a lot of places. And ultimately, it was, they did a lot of avant-garde music. So that was actually really funny that you mentioned that. Lots of new age avant-garde. Nice. And then we did some really quirky and fun things. So I was in a lot of different performing venues in New York City for like 5 solid years. So perhaps from 2011 to 2014, 15, maybe 15 was my final year, I think. So 4 years then doing that. I think it was essentially 5 seasons from what I remember. But yeah, so I was performing and I was there, we used to have these rehearsals every Thursday from 7 to 10. And I still lived on Long Island. So it would be like those late dinners, the acid reflux is real. And
that late at night.
I think I'm being counterproductive here. But yeah, we performed several times a year and we had just amazing performing opportunities and they're still performing. You can find them Cantor in New York. Wonderful choral director that does that. Very intelligent, very cool group. And yeah, so I had a great time doing that. And after that, I started doing more things on Long Island just to be more conducive to me teaching here. I teach on Long Island. So I started doing community theater and just going around here. And there are actually like really good theaters on Long Island. You'd be surprised. Oh, yeah. There's if you've ever heard of the Camin Theater, my friends performed there, and one day, so they're right in Northport. Great prestigious theater. The Argyle Theater, which is kind of right by me.
Yep, and that's the Argyle.
So there are actually good theaters here. So we have a couple of claims to fame. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. So you might have seen me around.
I could have. Oh wow,
nice.
You got that. You've got a very familiar face. For sure.
I appreciate that. But my last tool.
Oh yes.
Please tell us.
I have one more tool, but I can talk about this forever. So the final tool is actually really simple. This is actually exercising and releasing the tension from your body. So this is literally in any sort of physical activity, because when the energy is dormant, stagnant, and just rattling you, it needs to be released in some way. It's like a bloodletting, but sweat letting. Let's call it that. I just made that up.
I love that. I'm going to use that. Oh, well, I need to go do some sweat letting.
I'm like, where the
I'll take it. So tell me what it is, because I'll probably be using it this week sometime.
Letting. So yeah, it doesn't have to be right before the performance because you don't want to be out of breath, but in some way, shape, or form, you want to release the energy. That can be through yoga, pure bar, any sort of working out, bicep curls, crunches. There's also a thing called tapping that is very, very popular in like the new age therapy world, which is where you actually tap pressure points in your body to kind of release tension, energy, demons, whatever what have you.
Nice.
So what you're doing is you're kind of releasing that stagnant energy. Too much?
Oh no, that's perfect.
Not for Ryan.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Scale it back. Scale it back.
Oh no.
So yeah,
Oh no.
in any way, in any way, shape, or form, you do want to physically release the tension so that your heart rate can go up in a healthy manner. So the heart rate is typically up in an anxiety stasis, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's in that kind of thing for anxiety or stage fright, right? It's already elevated, but you're not moving. So now your heart is pounding and you're sitting. So the body also panics with that. Like, okay, my heart is racing, but I'm not doing cardio.
Right.
So 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 with a health professional, because depending on the level of anxiety, let's say you do some cardio on top of the anxiety, that might not be good for some people. So you do have to know your body. This is where the holistic thing comes in handy. You do have to know your body and have spoken to maybe some doctors about the anxiety you're feeling, if it's that great. But ideally, even just a little bit of light yoga will not harm you in any way, shape, or form. Any sort of stretching. Stretching is a very common thing that we do first thing we get up in the morning, maybe a little bit before we go to bed. Anything that you can slightly elevate the heart rate and remind the body like, hey, I'm human. I'm in this body. No need to fear. And you can kind of drop back in because now you're physically exerting yourself to elevate that heart rate. So that's another tool that I've found really, really helpful, incredibly, incredibly useful in my work. And I'll recommend it to anyone, even just doing some jumping jacks, just releasing in any way, shape, or form is so, so important to just reminding yourself, okay, I'm human, which this is normal. We have a natural thing, which is called automated avoidance. When we're scared, we want to retreat. That's a protective barrier so that we potentially didn't get eaten in the rock age, So yeah, it's very human, and this is very normal that our bodies still are producing these hormones and fear levels. So automated avoidance just tells us, wow, this is scary and I don't want to do this. And then the ego goes, don't do it or do it. So that's when we start to flex that muscle. The more we bring ourselves to that edge, the more we use that muscle, the easier it gets, the more we can logically say, I've done it before. And we just keep pushing ourselves to that edge.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's awesome.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that for sure.
Yeah, I'm
gonna I can email you all these tips. They've really helped me. They're like
seriously,
my
I'll
tried and
take
true.
it.
Nice.
Well, and
they're my tried and true. Yeah.
I was gonna say more to your point. I mean, a lot of the stuff you're saying is you're just very eloquently describing things that I was like, oh, I did that. I just had no one to tell me to do it. I just found it out through beating my head into a wall, which if you can go and have someone,
which is cardio.
Percussive cardio.
Percussive cardio. There you go.
But yeah, no, I was like, especially with the making your avatar thing. I remember there was like some point when I was on stage in high school, and it was like the biggest concert I had performed at that point, and I was like so nervous before I was getting up there because I had never done something like that. And basically, I essentially just came to a point like right before I did that, which was like, okay, so you could either choose to go and be very nervous about this, or you can choose to be very enthusiastic because the energy feels basically the same.
It does.
And no, but I basically just channeled that and it's like, how you doing, Batavia? And just basically went into the kind of that mode instead. But I think the avatar kind of idea is the best possible description of that because you are making a new persona.
Yeah. And I came upon it just by writing. I was writing, how do I build confidence?
I
was just typing this out. I'm like, so I wrote build your avatar. And I was like, this is actually building confidence, building self-esteem. And then, I emailed my entire studio. Okay, March, we're working on your avatars. Enter. So
nice. Oh, that's fantastic.
That was it. That's
fantastic.
Like everybody's going to be working on this in March in my studio. We're all going to be working on confidence, self-esteem, and how those are different, all that good stuff. But I liked how you just mentioned, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, anxiety and nervousness feels the same. Elevated heart rate, sweaty palms, fear, excitement, all feels the same. It does the same thing physiologically.
You know what? This has been absolutely wonderful. We just want to say thank you so much for for joining us. It's
Thank
been
you for having me.
so delightful talking with you. And Ryan, did you have anything that you wanted to ask before we close out today?
Oh, I am good. I am good. I mean, everyone can find your email. There's probably a contact form on
That's
that
right.
website.
There's a.
Why don't you tell us where our guests and our listeners can find you?
Okay, so I'm very easy to find. I'm singwithchelsea.com. I'm also Sing with Chelsea on Instagram. I'm Camin Music on Facebook, but that's going to be changing soon. Not a big deal. But under singwithchelsea.com, super easy. You can find it under booking, and you can message me there. You can also, if you want to just get down to a lesson, there's a coaching application on there too.
Oh,
if you feel you want to get into it. So there are both things there. And I'm also very reachable through Instagram platforms. So those are great ways to find me.
Well, fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, man. Hey, thanks to everyone for joining the How Do Artists live stream podcast. And on behalf of myself and Karlana Pettersson, we would like to say so long until next week. Same time, same place. Bring your questions and your curiosity, and we will see you then.